then, welcome to my book corner. We have another book review for you today, and today's title is Tab's Terrible Third Eye by Isaac Thorne. I received this as an ARC for free in return for a fair review, which is what this is. This is a psychological slash paranormal horror coming in at 297 pages long, and this releases on January the 28th, 2025. As always, we shall talk a little bit about the story, characters, world building, and the presentation of this title before I give my final thoughts at the end. So let's dive straight in. This story focuses on the Baird family, most specifically Tab, who live on a farm in rural Tennessee in the late noughties. And the story begins with a massive storm pelting the area that does actually flood the local area. And whilst they're attempting to get into the storm shelter, to which the entrance is mildly blocked, Tab goes looking for their pet cat, worried that they will not survive the storm, and appears to have some form of encounter with a demonic apparition, following which he develops a lump on his head which Tab believes to be an eye of some kind. Other people believe it's a pimple, and then begins to see a ghostly apparition with no eyes that seemingly has some sort of connection with the family. What follows is a number of escalating circumstances as the ghost that is haunting Tab is claiming to be there to protect him, but becomes more and more violent to those around Tab as they begin to go down a path of medical diagnosis, with the belief being this is some form of trauma-induced neurodivergence. And that makes a great deal of sense due to a number of events that happen during the course of this tale. This is a very slow burn story. It does a really good job of slowly but surely layering up as it goes. There's no massive jumps in tension here. And it does a really good job because of how consistently and slightly it layers up, that when it gets to the end, you suddenly realise just how far it has escalated from the start of the tale. I had a great deal of fun with this. I do like the way this balances the question of whether this is some form of neurological condition or if it is indeed something that's paranormal. It does an amazing job of obfuscating which way round that is. And I thought this was really, really good storytelling. So there's not a huge amount of characters in here, but they all perform a role to inform Tab's behaviour specifically. So you have Dr. Clifford, who is the psychiatrist that Tab sees through the majority of this. And the key denominator with those is that Tab's mother is a massive fan of Dr. Clifford, owning a book that they have authored. And they're actually going outside of the local area to see him. And therefore, it is implied it's going to cost more money because this is not their local health service. You then have Tim and Sandra Baird, the two parents of Tab, and they're going through a difficult point in their relationship. So Tab has been witness to a number of arguments and confrontations between the two, and is at an age where they're beginning to pick up on certain behaviours that are perhaps explaining some of Tab's then coping mechanisms. And then finally you have the older brother of Jeremy. And Jeremy is the typical jerk over brother, doesn't really want anything to do with their younger brother of Tab, bullying them relatively incessantly, not necessarily in a bad-natured way, but that way that older siblings often do, until the chips are really down and needs to step up and help Tab. The Tab themselves has a number of things going for them. Now, one thing that is established quite early on is that it appears that Tab falls somewhere on the neurodiverse spectrum. Specifically mentioned in here is OCD, as well as trauma and anxiety as well, are kind of the trifecta of things that appear to be affecting Tab through this. And the suggestion is that various different things that Tab is going through have led to him projecting these thoughts into this ghost that he is seeing and is speaking back to him. So it's almost like an internal projection. Tab is also a really talented artist who quite often becomes unfocused and as a sort of idle mechanism, and again doesn't hurt their grades in school or anything, but kind of idly draws and focuses on that while picking up the information around them, almost help as a focusing and a grounding method. They are shown to, generally speaking, be quite caring and looking up to their parents and their brother as well, even if there is a bit of a pushback on them due to their nature has also been displayed as being quite effeminate. And there are a few early signs of questioning of gender identity in here as well. Overall, everything works here to inform Tab as a character rather than building the external characters themselves. In an ideal world, I'd like to have seen all these characters have a little bit more development, but what they do is they really reinforce the behaviours that Tab is exhibiting through this, which really strengthens him as a character. And as the central focus of this tale, I am quite happy with that. And therefore, it also helps to almost blindside us as to whether, again, this is Metler, a paranormal occurrence or something that is being can be explained by medical science. The world building is actually relatively passive here, but it is well done, specifically at driving home the idea that this is, whilst not a secluded area, it's certainly a very quiet, underdeveloped area, especially due to the time of when this is. You're hitting economic problems as well, and that comes through in a number of the different things that helps inform the character arcs, with the costs and the stresses of keeping a farm and a local business running, as well as the idea that there's not really a huge amount of services in the local area. This is shown very early on due to the flooding from the storm and the difficulty of getting in and out of the local area as the local services are overwhelmed. This is further shown with the nature of Tab's medical treatment as they're going further afield to the actual local hospital, which is over an hour's drive away outside of the local area, due to the fact that the medical facilities within the town that they exist are not exactly great, basically operating out of some form of porter cabin rather than an actual medical facility. The other thing that's worth mentioning here is the use of the internet and the constant sort of reinforcement of the internet of still being a luxury rather than a necessity as it is seen as now by many people, with the idea of data caps, slow internet, and difficulty of getting hold of information online being really prevalent in terms of trying to find out what's going on. You don't have the option necessarily of just Googling WebMD or something like that to find out what's going on. So you have Sandra having the specialist books to read through and going through the actual written pages rather than just Googling stuff, or having the easy access to medical information that we have now, which we kind of take a little bit for granted. And all this really does a good job of, again, helping to reinforce and funnel everything towards Tab and how Tab is seeing things, being able to perceive all these difficulties that are going on and how different their situation is. And this even extends to touching on Tab's school life, where they're seen as slightly different to the people around, and that sort of casual cruelty that kids often display towards each other, especially when somebody is slightly different. And that is really, really well done here. Again, a bit like the character work, I would have liked them to be a bit more depth here, but what is done here, again, does an excellent job of reinforcing Tab as a character, and at under 300 pages, there is a limit on how much you can do with this. Presentation, then, you can see the cover on screen. It does a good job of kind of selling the surly mindset that Tab is in for large periods of this, as people kind of doubt what he's seen. He begins to sort of struggle to deal with his own emotions on the matters, as well as giving a look at the horrific ghost that is kind of haunting him. What I will say about this is a slow burn, as in it takes a lot of time to gradually layer everything up. And whilst it does pay off really, really well at the end, I know a lot of people like a little bit more action and bang in their horror, so this is not going to be for everyone. What I will say, though, is it does such a good job that when it hits the end, you kind of stop and think, how have we got to this point? And then when you look back, you realise how very carefully laid this has been all the way along, and it's masterfully done. The other thing that this is a little bit guilty of is to be a bit exposition heavy in places, and this is largely around the scenes to do with Dr. Clifford, as he goes into detail about some of the things that Tab is feeling and what some of the medical terminology is for that, which can be a slow read. Again, it makes complete sense for the characters, as we're having these ideas explained to a 9-year-old, so it's being explained in that form of way, as well as it being explained to Sandra the mother as well. It can slow the pacing down very slightly, but it is needed to again help create a level of doubt as to whether, again, this is a paranormal or a medical condition that's causing the things that Tab is going through. Overall, I actually quite enjoyed the writing in this quite well. I'll also add the dialogue at times can feel a little bit stilted, but I have said this before, especially with US dialogue specifically. I do feel this quite often because of a slight difference in nature of the application of US versus UK English, so that might just be me. But overall, I thought this was really, really well written. Final thoughts then. I really enjoyed this. I gave this 4.25 stars out of 5. I like the way it does an excellent job of straddling the idea of this being either a ghost or a medical condition or a mix of the two, and you can draw your own conclusions from that. I really appreciated the last chapter as well, which is a fast forward to over a decade in the future, post-COVID, to see where the characters end up. That's really well done as well. And in general, I just thought this was really, really well written. Now, it isn't for everybody. It is quite slow. It is quite exposition heavy. And that isn't for everyone. But personally, I really enjoyed this one. This was my first Isaac Thorne read. I will definitely be checking out more of their books in the future. But that's it. That's my review for Tab's Terrible Third Eye by Isaac Thorne, which releases on January the 28th of 2025. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will catch you all very, very soon.